It seems to be a repeated theme and concept in the scriptures, and it also appears in virtually every culture in some form or fashion. The principle of sowing and reaping remains at every time and in every place. Get your coffee. Jesus said those that draw the sword will die by the sword. That's not necessarily a prohibition against self-defense, but it is another version of the law of return or the principle of sowing and reaping. God speaks similarly through the prophet Isaiah in Isaiah chapter 33, saying, "Woe to you who plunder, though you have not been plundered, and you who deal treacherously, though they have not dealt treacherously with you. When you cease your plundering, you will be plundered. And when you make an end of dealing treacherously, they will deal treacherously with you." Contextually, that was a word directed at the Assyrians. At the time that Isaiah wrote it, Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, was leading his army against Isaiah's people, the nation of Judah. This was near the end of more than 2 decades of a march of conquest, really against everyone from the Syrians to the Edomites to the people of Tyre, Arabia, Ethiopia, Philistia, and so on. During that time, Assyria went from a large city-state or a regional power to an empire, and it seemed as if nothing would or could stop them. But God's word was to them, "Woe to you who plunder and deal treacherously. You will be plundered, and they will deal treacherously with you." What goes around comes around. The reaping often takes a lot longer than we expect, but it will come. The pendulum always swings in the other direction. The people of Judah had long been under the threat of the Assyrians, their brothers to the north, among the northern tribes of Israel. They had been completely plundered by them, completely destroyed, really. But as the prophet wrote the prophecy of Isaiah 33, God's judgment was soon to come upon Assyria's armies and their king, and they would reap the consequences of their long reign of terror. The principle of sowing and reaping and its cousin, the ancient law of return, they have their relatives in virtually every culture throughout history. The principle of causality, it is as true in nature as it is in physics, as it is in culture and history. You have plundered and dealt treacherously, you will be plundered and treacherously handled yourselves. God would defend and rescue his people in Judah. He would save them, for God was their judge, their lawgiver, and their king. Interestingly, those words in Isaiah 33, verse 22, "The Lord is our judge, the Lord is our lawgiver, the Lord is our king," those words are partially the inspiration for the division of powers and the 3 branches of government in the United States. The United States has a judicial, a legislative, and an executive branch in its government because the founders recognized the importance of a separation between judge, lawgiver, and king. Only in a perfectly righteous and holy God can these 3 be joined together as one. And if the Lord is your judge, your lawgiver, and your king, then you can expect his salvation. And as the Assyrians moved in treacherous blasphemy at the end of the 8th century BC, the just judge, the King of Kings, he would ultimately bring his retributive justice against them. Something to think about. We'll see you next time.